What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to Credit Plug Vlog. So, I've been hearing a couple people chime in about how they can't get approved for any credit products despite having no derogatories and having a credit score over 700. Now, whenever I hear that off break, I know that you likely have a thin credit profile. And the reason why I know this is because at one point I had a sub 700 credit score. So my credit score was probably about like 660, 670, 680. And I was still able to get approved for decent limits, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 credit limits, despite having a sub 700 credit score. So one thing you have to realize is that it's not always about the numeric credit score. That's one thing I hear all the time. What's the minimum credit score you need to get approved? It's not about minimum credit scores. It's about the quality of your credit profile. And oftentimes, when people get these AU trade lines and it boosts their numeric credit score, they assume that they're more credit worthy. But one thing you have to realize is that it's about the quality of your credit report and your primary accounts. So you want to focus on primary accounts. Now, the reason why I was able to get approved for different accounts despite having a sub 700 credit score at one point was because I had other accounts, other primary accounts, auto loans, credit cards, loans that were in good standing, but I did have an old student loan account that had a late payment on it. And so I basically had to wait until that account aged off of my credit report before I started getting the higher limits, the 20, 25, $30,000 personal credit card limits. So I wasn't getting those types of limits with a sub 700 credit score. I wasn't getting the best interest rates with a sub 700 credit score, but I was still being able to get approved based off of the strength of the other positive accounts. Now, another thing about derogatory items are going to impact you the most when it's more recent, right? So if you just defaulted or you just got a late payment added to your credit account, it's going to be more impactful. But let's say 5-6 years later after the derogatory, it's still going to impact you, but it's not going to impact you as much. So you can still get approved. Let's say if you have a 660, 650, you can still get approved if you have other accounts on your credit profile that are positive. Now, some people just assume that a higher credit score means you're more credit worthy. Now, in general, that is true, but it's not always the case. I had a client who added their 18-year-old child to their credit card to help boost their credit because they wanted their child to go to school, go off to college with a vehicle, right? So they want them to have a vehicle on campus. So they were going to finance the vehicle, and they didn't want to co-sign. They wanted them to be able to qualify based on their own credit and title the vehicle in their own name. So they added their child. Their child didn't have any other accounts. Their credit score jumped up to like a 730, 740. And so they thought everything was good. They went to the dealership, and the dealership denied the car loan. They basically said, you still have to co-sign because they don't have any credit history of their own. I also had another person, this is a subscriber, they might be watching this video, had a couple consultations. This individual had about a 780 credit score, and their credit score was a result of about 6 different authorized user trade lines on their credit report. They didn't have any of their own accounts, and they were pretty much afraid to apply for any accounts. And they were pre-qualifying for different things, doing soft pull pre-qualifications, and couldn't get a pre-qualification despite having a 780 credit score that was based primarily on, or not primarily, exclusively on authorized user trade lines. So the main point I want to make is that it's not always about the numeric credit score. It's about your overall credit profile, the strength of your overall credit profile. So you could have a lower score, but have a thicker profile with your own accounts, and vice versa. You could have a bunch of authorized users with no accounts of your own. Just because the score is higher doesn't make you more credit worthy. And that's one thing I want people to understand. You want to establish accounts in your own name. I know sometimes after you go through credit repair, you get delinquent accounts removed, you add some trade lines, your credit score goes up, you think you're ready for prime time. That's not the case. You want to build your own accounts over time with a solid track record. And you're going to want the installment loans. Installment loans, in my opinion, hold a little bit more weight than revolving accounts. So you just want to make sure you have your accounts under your own credit profile. I know the AUs are popular, you get that quick boost, but don't get too caught up in the numeric score, right? The numeric score isn't always what is being considered. You have things such as comparable credit, right? So if you're trying to get a $50,000 loan, some lenders want to see, okay, have you ever had a $20,000 loan or a $10,000 or $5,000 loan? Are you able to manage credit by yourself? Because remember, trade lines, AU, authorized users is not showing your credit worthiness. That's someone else's account that you're basically piggybacking off of. So a lot of lenders are not necessarily going to take that account or that credit history at face value to determine what or if they're going to lend any money to you. So, moral of the story, numeric credit scores don't always mean that you're going to get approved if you have a high numeric credit score. Yes, it is an indicator of what your credit score is. You want to focus on the quality of your profile, right? Your primary accounts. Are you a primary account holder with accounts that are under your own name? So when I hear people talking about, they can't get approved for nothing, I already know if you have over a 700 credit score and you can't get approved for anything, likely you have a thin credit profile or your profile is being held up by authorized user trade lines and you have very little primary accounts of your own, or you've been credit seeking, so you just look thirsty to the banks at this particular moment. Now, the reason why I know that this is possible is because at one point I had about a 660 FICO score and I was still getting approved for credit accounts. I didn't have over 700, I had under 700 because I had an account that was closed that had a late payment that was dragging my score down, because your score can only go so high when you have a derogatory item on your credit report. But you can still get approved if you have other strong data points, other accounts that you're managing properly. You can still get approved. So I don't necessarily buy that I have a 700 with no derogatories and I can't get approved for anything. The reasons why you can't get approved is likely because you have a thin profile or your accounts are being held up by trade lines. Anyways, that's all for today's video. Until next time, take it easy and we'll talk to you soon. Peace.